She staggered into town at dawn, a little Apache girl with a full-grown cowboy over her shoulders, blood dripping on the doctor's porch. "Who is he?" the doctor gasped. She didn't waver. "Cade Rourke, Circle K trail boss. Ring the black rope. Short, long, short." The doctor froze. How did she know the brand's secret call? And if he rang it, who exactly would come? The clinic door banged open. The little girl half fell, half dragged the man across the threshold. He groaned once, boots carving a red arc on the floorboards. "Table," the doctor snapped to himself, already pulling it clear. He lifted the cowboy's shoulders while the girl shoved at his legs with both hands. Together, they got him flat. The doctor slit the shirt with a scalpel, a deep crease of purple under his ribs. Dried blood. Something still leaking inside. "How long?" he said. "Night to morning," she panted. "He gave me the horse." "I walked." The doctor glanced at her, barefoot, knees skinned, hair matted with dust and rain. 10, maybe 11. Too light to be carrying anyone, let alone a man like this. "What's your name?" he asked, packing cloth into the wound. She shook her head. "Later." He tied the bandage tight. "What did you call him?" "Cade Rourke," she said. The syllables came clean. Circle K. The doctor's hands stopped. He knew the name, the way ranch towns know thunder. Foreman of the biggest spread for 4 counties. The man who could pull 50 riders by whistling through his teeth. "How do you know him?" he asked. Her chin lifted a fraction. "He stopped the men with blue coats from taking me." A beat. He bled after. The doctor pressed his palm to the cowboy's sternum and felt the shallow rise. The man's eyes fluttered, unfocused. "Cade," the doctor said loudly. "If you hear me, breathe in." A ghost of a breath came, then skittered away. "Lungs nicked," the doctor muttered. "Ribs cracked. He needs hands, hot water, and quiet." "Ring the black rope," the girl said. The doctor looked up. "What?" "On your porch," she said, pointing. "Triangle, 2 ropes. The black one calls Cowboys. Short, long, short." "He told me." He stared at her. The rusty triangle hung under the eave. 1 rope for town fires, 1 rope no one had touched in years. The Circle K had put it up back when the range war threatened to spill into Main Street. Short, long, short, roundup call. Only hands knew it. "How would he tell you that?" the doctor asked. "He said, 'If I sleep, you make them come.'" The girl's voice didn't shake. "You're the doctor. You pull the rope." The doctor swallowed. "If I pull it, every rider from the Circle K will thunder into this street inside the hour, and they'll see you." He let the thought sit. "You sure you want that?" She held his gaze. "I want him to live." Outside, the town breathed that slow, suspicious breath it held for anything Apache. 1 curtain moved, boots scraped wood somewhere up the block. The doctor made his choice. He crossed to the porch, wrapped the black rope around his hand and pulled. 1 sharp ring, 1 long, 1 sharp. The sound cut the morning clean, bounced off the hotel bricks, and ran down the dusty road like a thrown horseshoe. He pulled it again, and again. Short, long, short. By the 3rd set, doors were opening. 2 men in aprons stared. A woman in a bonnet clutched her shawl. The sheriff stepped from his office and squinted. "What's the alarm?" he called. "Trail boss down," the doctor said. "Circle K." The sheriff's eyebrows climbed. And I need 50 riders or a miracle." The sheriff saw the small figure in the doorway then, dark hair, bare feet, jaw set. He saw what the town would see. His mouth tightened. "You sheltering her?" he asked. "I'm saving a man's life," the doctor said. "You want to help. Keep the porch clear." The sheriff held his stare, then nodded once. He turned to the street. "You heard him. Back up. No gawking, no trouble." Gawkers gathered anyway. Trouble liked the smell of its own name. The doctor ducked back inside. The girl hadn't moved. She stood like a stake in the floor, eyes on Cade Rourke's face. "What happened on the trail?" the doctor asked, probing for fragments that mattered. "Who shot him?" "Not shot," she said. "Horse rolled. He pushed me clear. Rock took his ribs." "You were alone." "Men with blue coats took my mother," she said. The words came flat, like a door closed from the inside. "They said I was next." He said no. The doctor's hand paused over a fresh bandage. Army patrol? She shrugged. They smelled like rain and iron. He didn't press. He could hear the ropes slapping the triangle in the wind still, even though he'd let them go. In his head the sound kept ringing. Short, long, short. Out on the flats, that call would be halfway to the bunkhouses by now. Hooves would drum. Dust would rise. The girl reached for the whiskey bottle beside the basin. The doctor caught her wrist gently. Not for you. For him, she said. He bit it when the breathing hurt. The doctor offered a sliver of wood instead. This is cleaner. She took it without arguing and tucked it between Cade's teeth. The man's jaw quivered, then settled. What's your name? The doctor asked again. She hesitated, then, Narlin. She shaped it softly, as if the syllables were water and she didn't want to spill. All right, Narlin, he said. You'll help me keep him still. When I say press, you press. When I say stop, you stop. Understand? She nodded. Understand. He cleaned the wound again and packed it fresh. When he said, press, her small fingers held with the steadiness of a vice. When he said stop, she didn't flinch at the blood on her palms. Boots thudded on the porch. The sheriff leaned in, hat low. Riders, he said. Dust on the east road, a lot of it. The doctor looked at Nailin. She didn't smile. She simply breathed once, deeper than before. Minutes stretched. The first horses hit town at a run, 3 scouts, then 7 behind, then the street filled with brand-burned mounts and men in trail dust. They slid from saddles while hooves were still dancing, eyes searching the porch, the windows, the doctor's hands. A tall rider shouldered through, scar on his jaw, coat torn at the sleeve, the kind of man who didn't raise his voice because the ground raised it for him. Where is he asked. The doctor nodded to the table. Inside. The man took one step, then saw Narlin. His jaw hardened. What's she doing here? Carrying your boss 12 miles, the doctor said, sharper than he meant. You want him breathing? Don't waste mine. The man's eyes flicked to the cowboy on the table. A heartbeat later, the fight in his face broke into fear. He pushed past the threshold, hat in hand now, dust and authority falling off him like rain. Cade, he said, voice gone soft, you stubborn old fool. He touched Rourke's shoulder and looked at Narlin. How you carried him? She nodded. He looked at the doctor. What do you need? Boiling water, clean shirts, strong hands that do exactly what I say. The doctor's voice left no room. And quiet. The rider turned to the door. You heard him, he barked. Boil, tear, carry. Shut up. Men scattered, out to the alley pump, into the laundry, down to the livery for more blankets. The sheriff planted himself at the bottom of the steps with his palm open and his revolver holstered. The porch filled and emptied, a human tide moving to one tide's pull. A boy ran in with a kettle sloshing. The doctor nodded him toward the back. Another hand dumped a pile of clean cotton on the chair. Narlin took a strip without being told and twisted it, ready for the next command. Cade's eyes opened a crack. He found the doctor's face and then the girl's. His lips moved around the sliver of wood. Don't talk, the doctor said. Breathe. He did, shallow, hitching. The tall rider leaned close to Narlin. What did he say to you out there? His voice tried to be gentle and landed on rough. Narlin didn't look away from Cade. He said, tell the doctor the call. Short, long, short. He said, if the hands come, I can rest. She blinked once. He said, don't let me die while you're small. The rider's throat worked. He stood up fast. We'll keep him big, then. More horses, more dust. The street buckled with bodies and worry. A second wave of Circle K men arrived, then a third. 50. Easy. They filled the space from clinic to blacksmith. Faces turned toward the porch, hands fidgeting with reins they weren't holding. Across the street, doors cracked. Someone hissed, Apache, like the word might bite them. A mutter rose, fear, resentment, the old two-headed thing. The sheriff didn't look back. Trouble stays outside, he said to no one and everyone. You take it inside, you meet me first. Inside, the doctor lifted a hand. We press. Narlin pressed. Cade groaned, breath catching high, then dropping lower into his chest. The doctor nodded. satisfied for the first time. "What's her stake?" a voice murmured from the doorway. "She is the stake," the tall rider said. The doctor tied off a final knot and stepped back to soak his hands. "He needs ours," he said. "No shouting, no stamping. If you have to spit, spit in the street." A chuckle rippled, thin, grateful. The tall rider turned to the porch again and raised his voice just enough. You heard him. Boots light, voices lighter. The noise outside softened. The clinic breathed. The doctor leaned to Nalin. "You did well." She didn't answer. She stared at Cade's chest like she could move it with will alone. After a long minute, the doctor asked, "Why bring him to me? There are ranch houses closer." "Because he said your name," she replied. The doctor's face opened. "He knows me. He said, if I fall, find Dr. Hayes. He owes me a knight from the Arroyo War." Her gaze shifted. "Do you?" The doctor's mouth tightened. He didn't look away from the bandage when he answered. "I do." Outside, a fresh clatter. Not hooves, wagon iron. The sheriff half turned. "Who's that?" the tall rider called. The answer came sharp and ugly from the street. "Widow Decker's boys. They say an Apache dragged Rourke in. They say the sheriff's coddling one." The room cooled. Nalin didn't move. Cade's breath rasped and steadied. The tall rider looked at the doctor. The doctor looked at Nalin. The sheriff wet his lips and shifted his stance on the step. 50 cowboys filled the street like a fuse laid to powder, and someone outside, young and wired with drink, just struck a match. The shout outside cracked the hush inside the clinic. Boots shuffled on boards, spurs chimed, and the raw rasp of young voices grew meaner. "Sheriff's got an Apache girl hiding in there," one boy hollered. "What's he protecting her for?" Murmurs spread like fire through dry grass. Nalin stood rigid beside Cade's cot, her small hand still pressing a bandage. Her eyes never left the cowboy's chest. Each rise was shallow, each fall slower than it should have been. Dr. Hayes wiped his palms, voice taut. "Ignore them." The tall Circle K rider bristled. "They won't be ignored long." He leaned toward the window, his jaw like carved oak. "Widow Decker's boys want a show. They'll break something just to hear the sound." The sheriff barked from the porch, hand hovering near his holster. "Step back. This is a sick room, not a saloon." A laugh answered him. Sharp, young, drunk. "We ain't leaving till we see the redskin brat." The doctor's eyes cut to Nalin. "Don't move." "I won't," she whispered, voice flat. But outside, the tension braided itself tighter. Boots pounded on the planks. Someone rattled the clinic door, shaking it hard enough to make Cade groan. "Stay away from that door," the sheriff roared, shoving the first boy back. But more shadows pressed forward. Scarjaw, the tall Circle K rider, stepped into the frame beside the sheriff, shoulders square. "You boys forget yourselves," he growled. "This is Cade Rourke's house now, and we're standing guard." The name rolled over the crowd. Even the drunkest faces stiffened. "Cade's in there," one boy muttered. "Alive?" Scarjaw snapped. "Because she—" He jerked his chin toward the room where Nalin stood, carried him further than any of you ever carried your own boots. The street went still for a breath. The crowd shifted, muttering, weighing how far they wanted this to go. Inside, Cade stirred, lips moving against the splinter of wood between his teeth. His eyes opened a slit. Nalin bent close, straining to hear. A rasp. 2 words, shredded but clear enough for her. "Not safe." She pressed harder on the bandage, her voice low and fierce. "Rest. I'll keep you safe." Then the doctor's voice snapped. "Water, now." 2 Circle K men rushed with a steaming bucket. Hayes plunged clean cloths in and wrung them over Cade's chest. Steam rose with the smell of iron. The sheriff's voice thundered outside again, ragged with strain. "Back off. Or, by God, I'll drag you to the jail myself." The crowd swelled in reply, boots scuffing, fists pounding on the wall. The triangle bell still swung from the black rope above the porch, clanging faintly with each jolt. And then it happened. One of the younger boys shouldered past the sheriff, lunging toward the clinic door with a hand on the latch. Scarjaw's pistol barked once, not at the boy, but into the porch rail an inch from his hand. Splinters flew. The crowd jumped. "Next bullet," Scarjaw growled, "finds a chest." The porch fell silent but brittle, like glass about to shatter. Inside, the doctor looked at Nalin, voice tight with urgency. "If this turns, if they push through, what do I tell them you are to him?" Nalin lifted her chin. Her answer was calm, shocking, final. "Tell them I'm his daughter." The doctor froze, cloth dripping in his hand. Scar-Jaw's head turned. Even Cade's eyelids fluttered at the words, and outside, as if fate had been waiting for that sentence, another rumble rose, the thunder of more hooves, harder, heavier, dust boiling on the east road, 50 more riders answering the black rope call, and no one on that porch knew whether they were riding to save Cade Rourke or to burn the town down for what it had done. The sound of hooves thickened, rolling like thunder, funneled straight into town. Dust lifted at the horizon, swelling higher with each second. The porch crowd faltered. Widow Decker's boys looked at one another, their whiskey courage thinning fast. Scar-Jaw holstered his pistol with a snap. "Now you'll see," he muttered, low but sharp enough for the gawkers to hear. "You don't answer the Circle K bell and live to brag about it." The sheriff's face tightened. He planted both boots, palm out. "Nobody draws," he barked. "Nobody breathes wrong. Or we'll have bodies in the street before the coffee's cold." The first wave of riders hit Main Street. Hard men, dust to their hats, rifles slung but easy in the hand. They reined in as one, horses sliding sideways, iron sparking on stone. Behind them, another line poured in, then another. The street filled to bursting, a wall of horseflesh and anger. At their head, a figure cut clear, broad shoulders, scar under one eye, coat faded by years on the trail. His voice didn't need to shout. "Where's Cade?" Scar-Jaw pointed at the clinic. "Inside." The leader swung down, boots striking boards like verdicts. His eyes swept the porch, stopping on the sheriff, then on the cluster of Widow Decker's boys, shrinking under his stare. "You call this guarding?" he said, voice quiet but full of iron. "Letting children pound at his door." "They're no children," the sheriff snapped, "and I've held them back best I could. Don't start a war on my porch in Clay." The leader, Clay, turned his head slowly, gaze cutting to the black rope swaying above. "You pulled it." "Doctor did," Scar-Jaw said. "At her say-so." Clay's brow furrowed. "Her?" And then he saw Nalin. She was still inside, framed by the doorway, her hands pressed to Cade's chest. Dust and blood streaked her face, but she stood like the floor belonged to her. Clay's eyes narrowed. "What's she doing here?" Scar-Jaw's jaw tightened. "Carried him 12 miles on her shoulders." A murmur rippled down the line of riders. Faces hardened, some in disbelief, others in grudging respect. Inside, Dr. Hayes muttered, "Keep pressing." Nalin did. Cade's chest hitched, groaned, then rose again, steadier this time. Clay stepped onto the porch. His voice cut through the air. "Girl, who are you to him?" The clinic went silent. Even the doctor froze, gauze dripping red. Nalin raised her chin. Her answer carried clean, without a tremor. "I am his daughter." Gasps rippled. Cowboys shifted in their saddles. Widow Decker's boys went pale. Clay's face was unreadable. His gaze shifted to the sheriff, who looked stunned, then back to the girl. "You say that to me?" Clay asked softly, dangerously. Nalin didn't blink. "Yes." Behind her, Cade stirred, voice raw as gravel. A single rasped word escaped his lips. "Daughter." The effect was instant. The Circle K riders erupted, some shouting disbelief, others swearing, others lifting hats like they'd heard gospel. The sheriff swore under his breath. The doctor gripped the table hard enough to blanch his knuckles. Clay's eyes burned, but not with fury, with calculation. He turned to the street. "You hear him?" Cade Rourke spoke it. "Blood or not, she's his daughter now." The Cowboys answered with a roar that shook windows. 50 voices, 50 spurs drumming against wood and earth, claiming her with the kind of sound that starts fights and ends them. The sheriff hissed, "Do you know what you've just done?" Clay's eyes flicked back to him. "I know I've just sworn her safe by 50 guns. And if your townsfolk touch her, they'll answer to all of us." Widow Decker's boys slunk backward, their courage turning to dust. One spat in the dirt, but his boots carried him away fast. Inside, the doctor leaned over Cade, listening to the faint pull of breath. "You've bought her a shield, girl," he muttered, "but shields cut both ways." Nalin didn't answer. She pressed the bandage harder, her face pale, her arms trembling from exhaustion. Cade groaned once, his eyes fluttering open to slits. They searched, unfocused, but stopped on her. She bent close. "Rest," she whispered. "They came. I made them come." His lips twitched into something like a smile before sleep dragged him under again. Clay stepped into the clinic, hat in his hand now. He looked at Nalin long, then at the doctor. "Keep him alive," he said. "Do whatever it takes. The ranch will pay." Dr. Hayes wiped his hands, voice sharp. "I'm not doing this for pay." Clay's mouth twitched. "Then do it because if he dies, 50 men will be looking for someone to blame, and they'll start in this town." Outside, horses stamped, men muttered, the black rope still swaying gently in the wind. And in the center of it all, one lie, "I am his daughter," had already become a truth too big to take back. The town square had never held that much dust or silence. 50 Circle K riders stood like a wall of iron, horses stamping, eyes fixed on the clinic porch. Behind them, townsfolk crowded doorways and windows, muttering under their breath, the word Apache bouncing from lip to lip like a spark in dry straw. Sheriff Mallory kept his palm over his holster but didn't draw. "Clay," he called, voice steady but frayed at the edges, "you're dragging this town to the edge of a fire pit. One word wrong and we all burn." Clay, scar under his eye catching the morning light, didn't turn. His gaze stayed pinned on the clinic door where Nalin stood, still braced beside Cade. "The word's already spoken," he said. "Cade named her. That's law enough for us." From the crowd, Widow Decker's eldest shouted, "Law? Since when does a dying man get to spit on blood and make savages kin?" The riders shifted, a ripple of leather and iron. One of them spat into the dust. "Since he's Cade Rourke." The sheriff stepped down a stair. "Boys, listen to me." But the words drowned under a single cry. "Apache thief!" A bottle flew, shattering against the porch rail. Nalin didn't flinch, but Dr. Hayes jerked at the sound, his scissors clattering to the floor. Clay wheeled on the crowd, voice booming like a storm-breaking rock. "Throw another, and you'll pick it out of your own ribs." The street froze. Even the horses went still. Inside, Hayes pressed cloth to Cade's side, his jaw tight. "This girl's the only reason he's here breathing," he muttered, "and that crowd wants her gone." Cade stirred faintly, lips moving. No words came, just a low groan, but Nalin bent close, whispering in his ear, "They can't touch me. You said so." Her small hand trembled, but her eyes stayed hard, fixed on the doctor's work. On the porch, the sheriff finally snapped, "Clay, I can't hold both sides at once. Either you pull your men back or I start cuffing whoever moves first." Clay stepped closer until his shadow touched the sheriff's boots. "You try it, and 50 more will ride from the Circle K by sundown. You want that smoke on your badge?" The sheriff's mouth twitched, but he didn't answer. His eyes darted to the crowd, to the rifles resting too easy in too many hands. Then Nalin's voice cut the clinic quiet. "He saved me. Now I save him." "That's the trade." Hayes looked at her, startled. "Trade." She nodded once, eyes shining but unbroken. "My mother is gone. He took me instead. He said if I carried him, he would live long enough to make me his." She swallowed. "So I carried." Clay heard. So did the men nearest the door. The words spread like spilled kerosene, carried him 12 miles, carried him to claim her, carried like a daughter should. The sheriff's face paled. "So you hear what you're doing now, girl? Do you know what this makes you?" "Yes," she said simply. "Alive." The crowd erupted again, half in outrage, half in disbelief. "She's lying," Widow Decker screamed. "She's twisting his words." But Scarjaw barked over them. "Cade spoke it. I heard him. So did you." Silence followed, heavy as a coffin lid. Nobody could unhear the rasp that had slipped from Cade's broken mouth. "Daughter." Clay stepped to the porch rail and faced the street. "You don't like it, ride out. But if one hand is laid on that child, it's laid on the Circle K, and we do not forget." The sheriff pressed fingers to his temple. "You'll split this town in two." Clay's eyes burned. "Then you'd better choose which half you like living in." Behind him, Cade groaned again, eyes fluttering open for a heartbeat. He saw Nalin, tried to lift a hand, failed. But his lips shaped the same word, "Daughter." It was enough. The riders roared their answer, spurs hammering the boards, fists striking saddles. The street shook with it. The townsfolk fell back, white-faced. Widow Decker covered her mouth, eyes wide with a different kind of fear now. Inside, Hayes muttered, "God help us all." That child's lie just became the only truth anyone's willing to die for. And outside, the sheriff's deputy sprinted up the street, shouting breathless, "Dust cloud on the south road! More riders coming! Not Circle K, not town. 50 strong. Maybe more." Every head turned. Clay's hand went to his revolver, the sheriff's to his badge. Nalin just pressed her palm harder to Cade's chest and whispered, "Breathe. Don't stop now." The porch groaned under weight as 50 Circle K men shifted, ready, because whoever was riding in wasn't coming to watch, they were coming to claim. Dust boiled up the south road, low and dark, riders packed tight, hats pulled low, rifles scabbarded but ready. Not ranch hands, not townsmen. Their horses were too clean, their coats too matched. Clay's mouth flattened. "Range Association," Sheriff Mallory swore under his breath. Silas Cobb's lot. The column fanned at the far end of Maine, stopping just short of rifle range. A man in a black neckerchief rode forward alone, reins in 2 fingers as if the town belonged to him. His beard was neat, his eyes weren't. "Sheriff," he called smooth, "we'll relieve you." His gaze slid to the clinic. "We're here for the Apache miner and any parties aiding her concealment." Clay stepped down off the porch, coat open, hands visible. "You're not relieving anyone," Cobb smiled without teeth. "Territorial Order 71, custody of hostile wards." He tapped a paper tube at his saddle. "Signed yesterday." Mallory didn't take it. "This is my street. That building's a sick room." "Then fetch the girl," Cobb said, patient as a snake in winter. "Or we fetch her." Inside, Hayes cut a look toward the door. "Ignore the voices," he told Nalin, steady as he could fake it. "He needs air more than they need noise." Cade's chest rasped, shallow and stubborn. The doctor slid a palm under the ribs and winced. "Trapped lung," he muttered. "If I don't vent it, the next breath will be his last try at one." Nalin's eyes flashed. "Do it." "I need a hollow reed or thin tubing," Hayes said, rifling drawers that coughed dust and nothing else. "Something I can cut, something clean." Nalin set her bundle on the table, fingers quick. She unwrapped willow bark, a length of river reed she'd tied with sinew. "For whistles," she said, "or medicine steam." Hayes met her gaze for one beat that carried 30 years. "That'll do." On the porch, Cobb lifted his chin a fraction. "Make way," he said. Behind him, his men shifted, formation flexing like a hinge. Clay raised his voice just enough. "You put a boot on this board, Cobb, and 50 men will count it a shot." Mallory's hand hovered over his badge like it could grow heavier. "Everyone hold," he said, not sure who listened. Inside, Hayes snapped the reed to length, boiled it, wiped it clean. "Nalin, hands here. Press and don't watch me." She pressed. She watched anyway. Hayes set the point, exhaled, and pushed. Cade jerked. A hiss of air bled out around the reed, wet and ugly. Then, blessedly, his chest fell and rose with something like room in it. Hayes sagged an inch. "Good," he breathed. "Good." Nalin didn't blink. "Again." "Not yet," Hayes said. "Now we keep him still." On the street, Cobb's patience frayed. "Ranchmen," he called to the Circle K wall, "you're welcome to ride. We're not here for you. Just the girl your foreman adopted with his last breath." His smile turned on its edge. "If the word holds at all." 50 heads tilted as one. Clay's voice came back flat. "It holds." Cobb's eyes cooled. "Then step aside and let law walk." Mallory scraped a boot heel on the plank. "That paper isn't law here unless I say so." "You won't say so when the fort reads your name," Cobb replied. He nodded once. 3 of his men nudged forward at a walk, rifles low, every inch a test. Scarjaw moved with them, easy as a door closing. Don't! A rooftop shot cracked, mean, high, impatient. The doctor's hanging sign splintered and swung. Screams flared, died, flared again. Both lines tensed to breaking. "Hold your men," Mallory bellowed, voice breaking on it. "Next trigger ruins this town." Cobb didn't even glance at the roof. "At noon," he said, as if no shot had been fired, "we take the girl, willing or not." He tipped his hat a hair. "That's 30 minutes to write your prayers." He returned to his line, sure as a clock. Clay watched the south road like it might bite. "He's timing it for the fort to hear the echo," he said, "so the report reads, tidy." Scarjaw spat dust. "We break them before 12. "No," Mallory snapped. "You break them. You break me. And then the army breaks what's left." He dragged a sleeve across his forehead. "Think. Not with your trigger. With your cattle sense." Inside, the reed whispered, and the room breathed with it. Cade's color, bad as it was, looked less like the edge of a grave. Hayes looped a strip to secure the vent, hands sure now that he had stolen 1 inch from death. Nayland stood like a post set deep. Hayes caught himself staring. "Where'd you learn to carry a man?" he asked, as if the question might hold a gentler world inside it. She kept her eyes on Cade. "My mother carried me after soldiers took our food. She said a body is lighter when you borrow its breath, so I borrowed his." Hayes swallowed. "And the call. Short, long, short. How would Cade tell you that?" A twitch of her mouth, not a smile. "He said a daughter needs a horn." Then he slept. Hayes's chest pinched. "He called you that before town?" "Yes." Footsteps thumped the boards. Clay filled the doorway, hat in his hand, eyes taking in reed, bandaged child man. He exhaled slow. "How long?" "If they stay off my porch," Hayes said. "He lives through noon. After that, I can't promise." Clay nodded once. He looked at Nayland. "You made us come." "I needed hands," she said. "You got them," Clay said. His gaze went flinty. "Now we use them right." Outside, Cobb's men spread into a shallow crescent. Careful, professional. Town windows blinked like nervous eyes. The black rope on the triangle stirred in the light breeze, a whisper of the alarm that had started this. Mallory set his boots at the top of the steps. "Noon's close." "Closer inside," Hayes said, not looking up. Cade's breath climbed a notch, then tripped. Nalin steadied it with a hand that weighed nothing and everything. Cobb checked the sun with a pocket watch. He smiled at its answer. "Sheriff," he called, "make your choice." Clay lifted his voice for his men only. "If they push, aim at hands, not hearts. We need law mad, not mourning." Scarjaw grunted. "Hands are small." "Then don't miss," Clay said. The hotel clock began to wind itself toward the hour with a groaning click, gears old and eager. People held their breath because the clock told them to. Inside, Hayes tied off one last knot. "Now we wait," he said. "And we don't cough loud." Nalin finally let her shoulders drop a hair. She leaned, close enough for Cade to taste the salt on her skin. "I kept you," she whispered. "Keep me now." Outside, the first bell struck, low, hammering the ribs of every person in the street. Cobb's hand rose. His line eased forward a pace. The second bell gathered itself in the tower, and the town realized noon wasn't a time, it was a fuse. The second bell struck, louder than the first, and the sound seemed to crack the air itself. Every boot in the street shifted. Rifles tilted, horses sidestepped. Noon had come. Cobb's hand cut downward. His line moved, rifles steady, hooves grinding dust. "Back!" Sheriff Mallory roared, but his badge had no weight here. Scarjaw stepped onto the porch rail, pistol raised, voice like a whip. "One more step and you're feeding worms." The Circle K riders answered in a wave, spurs drumming, rifles lifted to a deadly half-aim. 50 men leaned into their saddles, a wall of dust and iron behind Clay. The air went razor-thin. Inside, Hayes hissed through his teeth. "Don't breathe heavy," he warned, working another cloth into place. "The reed holds, but not if the room shakes." Nalin pressed harder on Cade's chest, her lips moving soundless words. Prayers, promises, or both. Then the door shuddered. A rifle butt slammed it from outside. Clay's revolver boomed once, the shot chewing a divot into the porch boards at Cobb's boots. Dust leapt. The Circle K line roared, spurs hammering, rifles snapping to shoulders. Cobb didn't flinch. He looked down at the hole, then up at Clay. "That your first shot?" "That's my last warning," Clay growled. The street bent like a bowstring. Mallory stood between them, hat in one hand, palm out. "Nobody fires," his voice cracked. "You loose one bullet. This town writes its own funeral." The hotel clock's third chime banged out, dragging every ear with it. And then a voice no one expected cut across the noise, thin but steady. "Stop!" Narlin stood in the doorway, blood smeared on her small hands, Cade's chest rising weak behind her. Her dark hair clung to her cheeks, her eyes locked on Cobb. "You want me," she said. "Then look, I'm here." The riders went still. Even the horses seemed to listen. "I carried him," she said, her voice carrying clear to the far end of the street. "When your laws and your papers left him, I carried him. He called me daughter. That's my truth." Cobb's face twitched. For a breath, he looked almost human, almost swayed. Then his mouth curled. "Pretty words," he said. "But words don't weigh against ink." He raised his hand again, and Cade's voice rasped from the cot raw as gravel dragged over stone. "Daughter?" It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The Circle K riders erupted, hats in the air, rifles lifted, a roar rolling down Main like thunder. "Daughter! Daughter!" 50 voices, 50 fists on saddles, claiming her in sound that shook windows. Cobb's line faltered. Men looked at each other, uneasy. The law on paper meant little against 50 armed hands howling one word. Sheriff Mallory seized the moment. He shoved himself between Cobb and the porch. "You push this now, and you're not arresting a child. You're starting a war you can't finish." Cobb's mouth hardened, but his horse sidestepped under the pressure of so much noise. His men's rifles wavered. Scarjaw grinned like a wolf. Clocks still ringing Cobb. "Time's up." The fourth bell hammered, shaking the rafters, and with it the standoff broke, not in bullets, but in silence. Cobb pulled his reins, furious. His men fell back, their line sagging like wet rope. "You haven't heard the last of this," Cobb spat. "Ink lasts longer than cheers." Clay stepped down from the porch, voice like an oath. "Then you better pray your ink can outlast her breath. Because she's got more of it now than you reckon." Inside, Hayes bent over Cade, relief sagging his shoulders. His pulse steadied. He bought himself another day. Narlin slid back to his side, pressing her small palm over his. "You hear that?" she whispered. "You bought me one too." Outside, the town was still caught between awe and fear, watching the girl no one had chosen to claim, until Cade had spoken, and 50 men had echoed him into truth. The sheriff dropped his hat back on his head and muttered, "God help us, she's Circle K now." And in the dust beyond the street, Cobb's retreating line cast long shadows, shadows that promised they would be back. Cobb's riders peeled off the street in tight pairs, dust trailing like a threat left on purpose. The town's noise didn't return. It changed, low, mean, carried in whispers through cracked doors. Clay kept the Circle K wall where it stood, 2 to a corner. "Eyes open," he said. "No whiskey, no heroics." Sheriff Mallory holstered slow. "I'll keep the boys off your backs," and he muttered. "I can't keep their mothers from talking." "Let 'em talk," Scarjaw said, not looking at him. "They move, they meet iron." Inside, the clinic felt smaller. Heat collected. Flies tested the window. Hayes checked the reed, listened, checked again. Cade's chest rose, fell, found a rhythm that wasn't good, wasn't fatal. Narlin hadn't moved from her post. Her palms were small anchors. Hayes broke the quiet. "Why daughter?" he asked, voice low. "You could have said friend or nobody. Why take a word that paints a target?" She didn't look up. "Because a daughter can stand in a doorway," she said. "A nobody can't." Hayes blinked. The answer landed and kept falling. "Who taught you that?" "My mother," she said, "before soldiers taught her different things." He swallowed. "What was your father?" "Gone," she said, no tremor. "Before I could ask him to stay." Boots thudded on the porch. Clay leaned in. "How close to breaking is he?" "Closer than I like," Hayes said. Not as close as he was. Clay's eyes softened a fraction at the corners. He nodded to Nalin. You've got a stubborn spine. I borrowed his breath, she said. It made me heavier where I needed. Clay looked at Hayes like he'd just heard scripture. Hayes didn't trust himself to answer. A woman in a sun-faded shawl slipped past the sheriff with a bundle of clean sheets and a tin of boiled lye. For doctoring, she said. She didn't meet Nalin's eyes, but she didn't flinch either. Thank you, Mrs. Hale, Hayes said, relief honest in his tone. From the hotel steps, Widow Decker hissed, "Traitor," into her shawl. Her boys stared at their boots. Mallory raised his voice. Town stays put. Clay's men hold the street. That's the whole song. The song didn't please everyone. A range association man lingered at the livery, taking notes he pretended not to take. Cobb was gone, but his shadow paced. Hayes wiped Cade's brow. If we can get him past sundown. Then what? Clay asked. Then fever, Hayes said. Then pain. Then maybe he sees morning. Scarjaw peered at the reed. What happens if that plugs? Don't say it, Hayes snapped. If it does, I fix it. Nalin finally shifted her weight. Teach me, Hayes stared. To open a chest. To hear a breath going wrong, she said. To fix fast. He hesitated. Then he took her wrist, set her palm 2 ribs down. Feel the lift. If it goes shallow and high, tell me. If it stops it, you call me before the next blink. She nodded once. I'll not blink. Down the street, a door banged. Mrs. Hale's husband stepped out with a bucket and a broom, sweeping dust like it mattered. Other shopkeepers followed, busy hands, borrowed courage. Widow Decker watched, furious that the town might not choose her fear. She leaned to her eldest and whispered a plan in a voice that had learned to cut. He nodded too fast. Mallory caught the motion. Bobby, he said, warning under the name. Go home. Bobby smiled the smile of boys who've never paid for anything. Yes, Sheriff. He didn't move. Clay watched him from the corner of an eye and didn't move either. Inside, Cade's breath hitched. Nalin felt it first. Hi, she said, like a bird trapped. Hayes was already at the reed, clearing a clot with a twist of the cloth. Air hissed wet and ugly, then slid. He exhaled. Good. Nalin exhaled too, as if he'd given her permission. Eat this, Mrs. Hale said, pushing a heel of bread into Hayes's hand like he were a stubborn boy in church. He bit without noticing. Clay drifted to the window, watched the livery. The note-taker was still there, talking now to 2 men in Sunday coats and Monday eyes. They're building paper, Clay said. Paper grows teeth. Mallory's jaw worked. I'll break the teeth I can reach. Break the hands holding it, Scarjaw said. Touch one, Mallory shot back. And the fort finishes what Cobb started. Heat built, flies fattened. The clock over the mercantile dragged itself past 1 hour toward 2. Shadows shortened, then began to stretch again. Cade murmured. Hayes leaned close, a shape of a word. Not water, not pain. Hayes caught it, blinked, looked at Nalin. What? She asked. He said, stay, Hayes said, as if reporting a miracle. He's talking to you, not to me. She bent until her forehead touched Cade's arm. I will, she breathed. I told you I would. The town loosened by inches. A Circle K hand told a joke too softly to hear. A child laughed and was shushed. Mrs. Hale poured coffee for men who swore they didn't want it and drank anyway. Widow Decker didn't loosen. She sent her middle boy around the back alley with a look and 2 fingers, the way a general sends a scout. He vanished between sheds. Mallory didn't see him go. Scarjaw did. He eased off the rail. At his. Scarjaw tipped his chin toward the alley. Clay shook his head once. No sparks. Then we watch, Scarjaw said. He moved downhill, casual, then disappeared too. Inside, Hayes checked a fresh seep of red. He'll need laudanum before the next wave hits, he said. Not now, Nalin said. He'll stop breathing to sleep. Hayes looked at her. You've seen that, she nodded. Too many times. The doctor's eyes warmed with something that wasn't pity. You've seen too much that should have been mine to carry. Your hands were busy, she said. No heat, just fact. A small fist rapped the window. Hayes turned. A boy stood there with a tin cup. "Water for the girl," he announced, proud of himself for choosing a side. Hayes cracked a smile and waved him to the porch. Nalin drank. The water tasted like rope and kindness. She set the cup down without letting go of Cade's breath. Mallory's deputy trotted up, panting. "Sheriff, Fort Runner came through. Captain says hold the line. Don't spill any blood, he's got to explain. He'll ride at dusk if we haven't made fools of ourselves by then." Clay snorted. "We made fools at breakfast." Mallory rubbed his eyes. "Dusk's a long road." It got longer. Heat bowed the porch boards. Sweat slicked rifle stocks. The flies learned which faces wouldn't swat. Then the breeze shifted. Not much, enough. Nalin lifted her head. "Do you smell that?" Hayes did. Kerosene. Thin at first, then not thin. It came from somewhere wood shouldn't smell like that. Clay's head snapped toward the alley. Scarjaw reappeared in the side yard, walking fast without running, eyes hard. He didn't shout, he didn't need to. His face said fire. Hayes moved to the back door. Heat licked the bottom gap. Curious. Mallory swore, already running. "Buckets! Now!" On the porch, Mrs. Hale screamed, not loud but honest. Smoke curled under the boards like a hand looking for a throat. Inside, Cade's chest hitched. The reed stuttered. Nalin slid between the table and the rising smoke, palms pressed, voice steady in the sudden roar. "Breathe," she told him. "I've got you." Outside, someone struck a match a second time because the first one hadn't felt like enough. The smell turned into a sound. The sound turned into flame, and the clinic, full of breath they had fought to keep, learned what it meant to be a wick. The flame found dry timber and leapt. In a breath, the clinic's back wall glowed orange, smoke curling like fingers under the rafters. Scarjaw kicked the rear door wide and barked, "Buckets here!" Men from the Circle K charged with pails, sloshing water over boards that hissed but didn't quiet. More smoke rose, thick and black. Inside, Hayes coughed, pulling his kerchief over his mouth. "Keep him low," he ordered. He dragged the reed, checked the seal, cursed when it rattled. "If smoke clogs this, he's gone." Nalin crouched, pressing tighter on Cade's chest, her small frame wrapped around him like a shield. "I won't let it," she said. Flames spat at the window. Glass cracked. The sheriff burst in from the front, sleeve over his face. "Back wall's lit. We can't hold it long." Clay followed, voice steady even with smoke scratching his throat. "Get him out. Move him now. He bleeds out," Hayes snapped. "The reed will tear." "He needs flat ground and stillness. Flat ground's about to be ash," Scarjaw shouted from the alley. A beam groaned above him, dropping sparks. The sheriff turned on the riders. "Form a line. Water here, sand there." Boots pounded. Buckets flew. For a minute it sounded like a river against the wall. Then a scream, high, ugly. One of Widow Decker's boys stumbled from the alley, his coat aflame. Men tackled him, doused him, but the sight lit every fear at once. The crowd in the street erupted. "Burn it down," someone shrieked. "Smoke her out." Clay stormed onto the porch, pistol in hand. "Anyone with a torch takes a bullet." His men echoed with rifles raised, a row of steel under smoke-dimmed sky. Inside, Hayes stripped his kerchief and pressed it wet against Cade's lips. "Nalin, blow air through here. Keep it moving." He shoved the reed end toward her. She didn't hesitate. She bent, breathed into it, forcing the smoke back from Cade's lungs. His chest fluttered, caught, then rose again. Hayes blinked at her, stunned. "Good." Again. She did. Small breaths, fast, relentless, her face red from heat, her eyes watering but steady. Cade's hand twitched, weak fingers brushing her wrist. She grabbed them, never breaking her rhythm. "I've got you," she whispered between breaths. "I carry you still." The roof cracked, timber giving. Hayes jerked his head at Clay. "We can't stay," Clay swore, then turned to his men. "Clear the street. We cut a path." Scarjaw appeared in the door, hair singed, face streaked black. "Back's gone. Only way is through." Mallory staggered in, coughing hard. "I'll hold the porch. You move the table." "On three," Hayes barked. He grabbed one end, Clay the other. Nalin climbed onto the table itself, still pressing Cade's chest. "Don't stop," she begged. Never, Hayes promised. They heaved. The table scraped through smoke, Cade's body strapped with torn sheets. Sparks rained as the front door blew wide, heat sucking the breath from every chest. "Go!" Clay shouted. They burst into the street. The crowd reeled back at the sight. A little Apache girl bent over a bleeding cowboy, blowing breath into a reed, keeping him alive with lungs too small for the weight. Even Widow Decker's boys went silent. Circle K riders closed around them, a ring of guns and dust. The sheriff fired his pistol in the air, dragging attention. "Anyone touches them answers to me first," flames roared behind. The clinic coughing fire into the sky, heat painted every face orange. Hayes bent over Cade, checked the reed, then nodded. "He's still here. God help me, he's still here." Narlin sagged, sweat streaking her cheeks. But she didn't stop. "Breathe," she whispered into the smoke-filled air. "Breathe." Clay lifted his revolver, eyes sweeping the crowd. "You wanted a reason to ride? Here it is." 50 Circle K rifles lifted in answer, and from the south road, hoofbeats thundered again, fresh, hard, fast. Not Cobb's men, not townsfolk. Soldiers. The fort had come. The crowd's breath caught. Mallory swore under his own. Hayes looked at Narlin. Her lips were cracked, her face streaked high, but her eyes burned. "Don't stop now," he said. "I won't," she whispered, pressing tighter as the sound of the cavalry poured into the firelit street. The cavalry came hard and clean, uniforms sharp against the smoke, sabers rattling in scabbards. Their column fanned into the square, horses stamping, eyes hard. The fire painted their brass buttons in flickers. At their front rode a captain with a jaw like stone. He raised his hand. "Cease this chaos." His voice cut above the crackle of flame. "By authority of Fort Larrabee, this town is under order." The Circle K wall didn't move. Clay held his revolver low but steady. "You're late, Captain. Man's already down, girl's already sworn." The captain's eyes snapped to the table. He saw Cade Rourke strapped flat, chest heaving shallow, blood wet. Then he saw Narlin crouched over him, her small mouth pressed to a reed, forcing air into lungs that couldn't take it alone. Her hair clung damp to her cheeks, her hands braced like iron. "What is this?" he demanded. Hayes, blackened with smoke, spat into the dirt. "This is a girl keeping your trail boss alive with breath she doesn't owe him." The captain swung down, boots crunching cinders. He knelt, peered at the reed, at the tiny ribs rising on Cade's chest. He turned to Hayes. "How long?" "Every breath she gives him," Hayes said. "Without her, he's gone." The captain looked at Narlin. "Step back, girl." She didn't move. She sucked in another breath, pressed her mouth to the reed, and forced Cade's chest to rise. She pulled back only long enough to whisper, "Breathe." Then again. The captain's face hardened. "I said—" Clay's voice cut him off, thunder in the smoke. "She doesn't step back. Not while he's still breathing because of her." Behind the captain, soldiers shifted, rifles sliding into hands. The crowd felt the shift and muttered, fear sharpening again. Widow Decker's voice rang shrill. "There, she's Apache, stealing our doctor's table, making fools of us all. Take her." The sheriff snapped, "Shut your mouth, Decker." His hand hovered over his pistol, but his eyes flicked nervously at the captain. The captain stood, dusting his knees. "We'll take custody of the wounded man. Surgeon at the fort will decide if he lives." Narlin's voice came flat, steady. "If you move him, he dies." The square fell silent. Even the fire behind them seemed to listen. The captain's mouth twitched. "You giving orders to the United States Army, child?" "No," she said, meeting his eyes. "I'm keeping my father alive." The word hit like a bullet. Murmurs rippled. Circle K men muttering approval, townsfolk gasping, soldiers stiffening. Clay stepped to her side. "You heard Cade name her. 50 men heard it. You drag her off. You're not just stealing a child. You're spitting on Cade Rourke's word." Jed Turner's voice rose thin and bitter from the crowd. He had slipped his irons somewhere in the chaos. "She ain't his blood. She's a trick, and you're fools for buying it." Scarjaw's pistol cocked. "Say that again." Jed grinned, wild-eyed. "Gladly." He raised his hand high, holding something small, glinting in the firelight. a flask with a rag jammed in its mouth. Oil sloshed. Flame licked the rag's end. Mallory's shout broke. "No!" Jed hurled it. The firebomb arced, sparks raining, and smashed against the boards 3 feet from the table. Flame whooshed high, heat blasting. The horses reared, soldiers cursed, townsfolk screamed. Cade's chest hitched in panic. The reed sputtered. Smoke clawed at his mouth. Nalin bent lower, tighter, sealing her lips, giving every ounce of air she had. "Stay," she whispered against him. "Stay." The Circle K wall surged forward, rifles raised, eyes locked on Jed, but the captain's shout froze them. "Hold!" His saber lifted, catching firelight. "Anyone fires, I hang the man that does." Jed laughed, ragged. "Hang me. You'll thank me when the redskin's dead." He snatched another flask from his belt. Scarjaw's shot cracked before anyone could blink. Jed spun, flask flying from his hand, exploding harmlessly in the dirt. He dropped, clutching his shoulder, cursing through blood and smoke. Clay's voice thundered, "Enough! Cade Rourke breathes because she wills it. Anyone here say different. Step forward and try her breath yourself." No one moved. The captain lowered his saber slowly. His eyes scanned the street, burned porch, armed cowboys, terrified townsfolk, and at the center, a girl smaller than the table she guarded, keeping Cade's chest rising against flame and fury. At last he said, quiet but iron, "The army doesn't interfere with a man's last word. If he called her daughter, she stays daughter till he rises or falls." Mallory sagged like a rope cut. Widow Decker went pale. The Circle K erupted with a cheer that drowned the fire's roar. Hayes looked at Nalin, still bent over Cade, face streaked with ash and sweat, lungs working for two. "Hold him," he whispered. "Just a little longer." She nodded once, without breaking rhythm, and the captain turned to his soldiers, barked a single order: "Form a bucket line." The fort men, Circle K hands, and even a few townsfolk moved as one, passing water down the street, beating flames back inch by inch. The fire that had meant to swallow the clinic bent, broke, and finally hissed itself to smoke. But the air stayed thick, the tension unbroken, because every man and woman watching knew the fire hadn't burned out. It had only changed shape, and the fuse still sat on the chest of a cowboy, breathing because a little Apache girl refused to stop. Smoke curled into the rafters of what had been the clinic, leaving only a blackened frame. Men passed the last half-empty buckets, sloshing them onto glowing boards until steam rose instead of flame. The street reeked of ash, whiskey, and rage held too tight. The captain lowered his saber, jaw set. "Enough. Fire's out." Clay holstered slow. "Fire on wood," he said. "Not in men." The captain's eyes flicked at him but didn't answer. Soldiers stacked buckets by the well. Circle K hands wiped soot from their faces with the same ragged shirts they'd torn into bandages. Even townsfolk moved, restless but subdued, muttering in clumps outside the mercantile. On the makeshift table dragged into the street, Cade Rourke lay pale, his chest still rising under the reed. Hayes bent close, hand steady at the pulse. "He's holding," he murmured. "Not strong, but holding." Nalin never left her post. Her lips pressed to the reed again, blowing slow, measured. Sweat streaked her brow. When she paused, it was only to whisper, "Stay." Then again. The priest from the mission, soot on his robe, slipped through the crowd. He crouched by her, voice soft. "Child, let me—" "No." She cut him off, not harsh but final. "If I stop, he stops." Hayes confirmed it with a grim nod. "She's right. She's his lungs now." The captain approached, eyes hard. "Doctor, he needs a surgeon and a sterile room. Fort's infirmary is a half-day's ride." Hayes rounded on him. "You move him. You kill him. He'll bleed out before your surgeon sharpens his scalpel." The captain stiffened. "Then he dies here." "No," Nalin said, pulling another breath, sealing her lips to the reed. Cade's chest lifted, fell. "He lives here." The Circle K men growled their approval. Scarjaw slammed a boot into the porch rail. "You heard her. He breathes because she says so." Widow Decker shrieked from the hotel stoop. "Lies! Trick of a savage girl!" The sheriff spun, voice like a whip. "Quiet!" His hand hovered at his holster. "I said this once already. If she's his daughter, she's under his roof. And his roof's the Circle K." The captain studied Nalin for a long beat, then turned to Clay. "If your men claim her, they claim the consequences. The fort won't shield you when Cobb writes his report." Clay didn't blink. "We don't ask shields, we carry our own." The soldiers shifted uneasily, caught between orders and sense. Mallory mopped his brow with a filthy kerchief. "Captain," he said, "if you march her off, 50 rifles will ride you down before sundown. And if you leave her, Cobb'll paint this as mutiny. Either way, it's blood." "Then it's my blood," Clay said. "No," Nalin said quietly, still bent over Cade. "It's mine." The words froze the square. Every head turned. She lifted her chin, eyes bright with smoke and exhaustion. "He named me daughter. That means I stand in the doorway, not behind it." Clay's jaw tightened. "Girl—" "No," she said again, stronger. "You fight because of me. So if they want someone, they take me." The Circle K erupted. "Never. Over our graves." Scarjaw's pistol leapt into his hand. Hayes snapped. "Quiet!" His palm hovered over Cade's chest. "You'll kill him faster with shouting than bullets." The priest laid a hand on Nalin's shoulder. "Child, you don't give yourself to wolves to save sheep. You stay where you're needed." Her eyes didn't leave Cade's face. "I'm needed everywhere he breathes." For the first time all day, Clay's voice faltered. "You're a child." She looked at him, calm, ash streaking her cheeks. "So was I yesterday. Today I'm his daughter." The words rang louder than the bell rope ever had. The cowboys lowered their rifles, muttering. The townsfolk shifted, uneasy. Even the captain's eyes narrowed, like he saw something more dangerous than bullets in her. Hayes leaned close to her ear. "Hold steady. He's slipping again." She pressed to the reed, gave another breath, another whisper. "Stay." Cade's chest rose. A tremor, but real. Scarjaw growled, pacing. "We can't sit here, Clay. Cobb'll be back with papers and soldiers that don't listen." The sheriff agreed grimly. "He's right. Law loves ink more than truth." Clay looked at the captain. "You'll let us take him?" The captain's silence said too much. "Answer," Clay demanded. The captain exhaled. "You leave this town with him. You leave under watch. I'll not stop you, but I'll not save you when Cobb drags your name to the governor's desk." Clay spat into the dust. "We've lived without his ink before." The Circle K cheered. Hayes wiped his brow, eyes on Nalin. "He's weaker by the minute. If we move, it has to be soon. If we wait, he dies before a mile." Nalin whispered into the reed again, voice breaking. "Then we move now." The street erupted. Cowboys shouting for horses, soldiers arguing, townsfolk hissing their fear. Through it all, Cade's chest kept rising only because a child wouldn't stop giving him her own breath. And above the noise, Widow Decker screamed the words no one wanted to hear. "She's killing him slow to steal his ranch." The square snapped. 50 men turned, hands to steel. The captain raised his saber. Mallory screamed to hold. And through the chaos, Cade's breath faltered again. Ragged, breaking. Hayes shouted, "If you're going to save him, decide now." The Circle K riders tightened the ring around the table. Soldiers lifted rifles. And Nalin bent low, lips to the reed, giving every shred of breath she had left. "Stay," she whispered. "Stay." The town held its own breath, waiting to see whether he would. The street felt like a powder keg with the fuse already hissing. Cowboys closed tighter around the table, horses shifting, hooves scraping. Soldiers formed a half-ring opposite, rifles tilted, faces blank but eyes sharp. Townsfolk crowded behind, whispering curses and prayers in the same breath. Sheriff Mallory barked, "Back up, all of you. You want blood on your boots and keep crowding?" No one moved. Clay stood in the doorway of the ring, revolver loose at his side, his voice carrying low but sure. "We're taking Cade south. His daughter goes with him. Anyone thinks different, they say it now." Widow Decker shrilled from her perch on the hotel step. "She's no daughter. She's a witch holding his breath with heathen tricks. When she stops, he'll die, and you'll all call it a miracle." Her words fanned the crowd. Murmurs rose, mutinous. A stone clattered against a hitchpost, thrown by a boy too scared to throw at flesh. Scarjaw's pistol barked skyward. "Next one's not at wood." Hayes snapped his head up from Cade's chest. "Quiet, he can't take shouting." His hands pressed a fresh cloth, eyes darting to Nalin. "You feel it?" She nodded, face ashen, breath high again. Like a bird hitting glass, she bent, lips to the reed, blew air steady, whispering, "Stay." Cade's chest jerked, then eased. The Circle K roared approval. "See? She keeps him," one shouted. "His blood runs because of her." But the townsfolk hissed back. "Apache lies. He's already gone." The captain of the fort raised a gloved hand. "Enough. This ends now. Doctor, prepare him for transfer. My surgeon will—" Clay cut him cold. "You drag him 1 mile and you bury him. He dies either way," the captain snapped. "Better under army care than in the dirt with a savage." The word hung in the smoke. Silence followed, ugly and deep. Clay's revolver lifted. Scarjaw raised his .50 Circle K rifle, snapped into the air like thunder. The captain froze, hand still raised. He'd drawn lines before, but not this one. Then Cade stirred, weak, broken, but he moved. His lips worked around the reed. No sound came, only a rasp. Nalin bent lower. His mouth brushed her ear. Her eyes widened. She turned to the captain, voice strong despite the ash in her throat. "He says he walks with me." The street broke into gasps. Clay's jaw clenched. "You heard him. He chooses. That's the end." The captain's gaze raked the girl, the Cowboys, the doctor. His saber hand trembled once, then dropped. "If you ride under my eyes. I'll not stop you, but I'll not save you when the governor asks for ink." Clay spat. "Ink don't bleed. Men do." The Circle K erupted in cheers, boots stamping, rifles lifted. The townsfolk shrank back, faces pale. Mallory wiped his brow, muttered to no one, "God help this town." Hayes tied off the reed, checked the pulse. "He'll hold if we keep him still," he said. "No jolts, no dust in that tube." Scarjaw barked to the men. "Blankets, lash a travois." "Smoothest horse we got." Cowboys scattered, hauling leather, rope, poles. Within minutes they had a stretcher lashed tight, low and wide. Hayes and Nalin guided Cade onto it, his chest bound, reed secured. He groaned once, breath catching, then steadied under Nalin's small hand. She walked beside the stretcher, one palm over his heart, her other hand gripping the reed. "Stay," she whispered. Clay swung onto his horse. "We ride now. South Trail." "Tight ring," the captain barked to his men. "Stand down." The soldiers eased rifles, though their eyes promised nothing was over. Widow Decker shrieked as the riders moved. "You'll damn us all. You'll bring fire on every roof." Her words were drowned in the thunder of 50 horses moving as one. The Circle K swept Cade and Nalin down Main, the ring closing tight, rifles outward. Hayes jogged beside, one hand on the travois. The sheriff stood frozen on the porch, badge gleaming dull in the smoke. The townsfolk melted into alleys and doorways. Some crossed themselves, some spat. None stepped in their way. At the end of Main, Clay raised his hand. The ring shifted, widened just enough for breath. "South," he ordered. "We ride till the sun's gone." The captain watched them vanish into dust, his saber low, his voice flat. "You've made your choice. Now we'll see if it keeps." Mallory turned on him. "You'll report it as what it is, a dying man's word. If you twist it, you'll split this land in two." The captain's jaw worked, but he said nothing. He mounted, signaled his men, and pulled back. And the dust cloud of the Circle K rolled south, carrying a cowboy tied to life by a reed, a doctor with empty hands, and a little Apache girl who refused to stop breathing for him. Behind them, the town exhaled the breath it hadn't known it held, and ahead the hills waited with their own silence, an ambush or a refuge. No one knew which. The South Trail cut through sage flats, the air sharp with dust and sweat. 50 Circle K men rode in a ring around the travois, rifles balanced across their saddles. Cade lay strapped to the poles, Reed trembling at each rise of his chest. Nalin never left his side. One hand braced the reed, the other pressed flat to his ribs. She walked barefoot through grit that chewed her skin raw, never stumbling, whispering each breath like a command. Stay. Again. Stay. Dr. Hayes trudged beside her, shirt black with soot. Every mile he checked the pulse, then shook his head. Too weak, he muttered. But he's here. God help me, he's here. Clay rode up front, eyes scanning ridges. Scarjaw drifted on the flank, pistol loose in his grip. Hawk-feathered clouds smeared the sky, promising storm but not rain. Behind them, dust lingered like a shadow. Soldiers had not pursued, but their eyes at the fort would. Cobb would ride too, with papers and men who believed in ink more than breath. The Circle K riders knew it. They muttered in low voices, fear wrapped in anger. Law'll hang us. Cobb'll burn the ranch. We should have left her. Scarjaw cut them off with a growl. You leave her, Cade dies. You want that on your soul. Silence followed. Sullen, but true. Near sunset, they reached a cut in the land where rocks rose high enough to hide a camp. Clay raised his hand. You hear? The ring broke. Men slid down, tied horses, lit small fires under stones. Hayes knelt, cleaned the reed, wiped Cade's lips. 1 more hour, he whispered to himself. Nalin crouched, stroking Cade's hand with her thumb. His eyes fluttered, half open. She leaned close. Daughter, he rasped. Faint but real. She bent until her forehead touched his. Yes, I'm here. The Circle K riders heard. Their faces shifted, some with awe, others with unease. Words spoken at the edge of death carried farther than rifles. Clay's gaze swept the camp. He called her again. That makes it carved. A rider spat. Carved in blood or carved in lies? Scarjaw's pistol lifted, slow. You question Cade. You question me. The rider's eyes dropped. He looked at the dirt, said nothing. Hayes straightened, voice hoarse. He needs sleep. He needs quiet. But quiet wouldn't come. A scout slid in from the ridge, dust on his hair. Lanterns north. Soldiers. They follow slow, but steady. Another scout from the west. Smoke. Cobb's riders. Not far. The Circle K cursed under their breath. Clay didn't. He only looked at the girl. Nalin held Cade's hand, her small shoulders squared against the world. She whispered again. Stay. Clay turned to his men. We move at dark, Scarjaw asked. And if they close before then? Clay's mouth tightened. Then we make them believe she's worth more alive than dead. The camp went still. Cowboys shifted uneasily, muttering prayers and curses alike. Widow Decker's name hissed through the circle, carried by tongues that wished her venom wasn't theirs now. Hayes lowered himself beside Nalin. You're 10 years old, maybe 11. Do you understand what you've done? She looked at him, eyes older than they should have been. I carried him. Now I keep him. That lie? Hayes began. It's not a lie, she cut him off. Her palm pressed Cade's ribs. He said it. Twice. The doctor had no answer. Above them, the last light died. The camp sank into shadow. Coyotes cried far off, their voices thin against the weight of what gathered closer. Soldiers with paper, riders with grudges, and a town that would never forget the words spoken on its street. Clay rose, revolver gleaming faint in the firelight. Mount, we ride when the moon clears. The men obeyed. Nalin stayed crouched, lips near Cade's ear, her breath still keeping his own alive. Stay, she whispered once more, and somewhere beyond the dark ridges, the lanterns kept moving closer. Moonrise found the Circle K ring, ghosting south through a dry wash, wheels whispering, horses stepping careful. The reed quivered at Cade's mouth. Nalin walked beside the travois, one hand steady on his ribs, the other guarding the tube like a candle in wind. A scout slid down a shale face, breath tight. Lanterns on the ridge, he hissed. 2 lines. Soldiers and Cobb. Clay's answer was a nod that looked like a prayer. Keep moving. They rounded a bend and the wash opened into a bowl of pale sand. Lanterns bloomed on the rim, left, right, behind, 3 crescents of light. Soldiers in blue, Men in town coats. Cobb at the west lip. Black kerchief neat. Smile wrong. The captain sat his grey at the north rim, jaw set. "Circle K," he called. "Hold." Clay lifted a fist. The ring stopped. The night held its breath. Cobb's voice cut from the west. "This ends now. The ward comes to us. The dying man goes to the fort." Scarjaw's laugh was a rusted hinge. "You come take either." The captain raised a palm. "Stand down. No one fires." His eyes found the travois. "Doctor, how long can he be moved?" Hayes didn't look up. "Not one jolt." As if to prove him a liar, Cade's chest hitched. The reed stuttered. Narlin's head snapped. "Hi," she said. "Like glass." Hayes reached, but Cobb had already seen the flinch. He smiled and nudged his horse a step. "Ink's faster than breath, Doctor." He flicked his fingers. 3 of his men climbed from shadow toward the wash floor, slow and sure. "Back," the captain snapped, but Cobb's men kept coming. The blue line shifted, unsure which order was theirs. Scarjaw slipped a pistol into his palm. "Clay?" "Not yet," Clay said. His voice didn't rise. "Girl." "Can you hold him?" "Yes," Narlin said. She didn't blink. She bent to the reed and blew. Cade's chest lifted, fell, lifted again. On the rim, Jed Turner's silhouette lurched from Cobb's line, arm in a sling, face lit by hate. "She's faking it," he shouted. "He's dead already." "Then hush your mouth," Scarjaw said, "and join him." Jed spat into the sand. "Take her, and this ends." The crowd on the west rim murmured. Paper rustled. A deputy of the association held up a tube. Letters rolled tight inside. "Order 71, he called. "Signed. Signed by men who were not here," the captain cut in, tired and sharp. "Hold your papers." Narlin didn't look up. "Doctor," she said between breaths, "it sticks." Hayes saw it. Clot rising in the reed. He swore and reached for his kit. Empty. Nothing clean left. He looked at Clay, looked at the ring of guns. Looked at the boy who would die for want of a hollow tube. A soft metallic pop sounded above him. The fort's bugler, thin, freckled, scared, had pulled the mouthpiece from his horn. He stared at it as if it had done the thinking for him. His eyes met the captain's. "Sir," he whispered. The captain didn't hesitate. "Take it." The boy scrambled down the slope, skidding, thrust the brass into Hayes's hand. Hayes didn't ask a saint's name. He boiled it in a coffee tin, shook water free, swapped metal for reed in a single breath. Air hissed. Cade's chest sagged, then rose, cleaner. A sound ran the ring like a wire being plucked, relief, raw and bright. Cobb's smile went thin. "Cute trick," he said. "Still ends with me." He raised his chin at the 3 men in the wash. "Bring her." Blue sleeves shifted. The captain's voice flattened. "Stand. Down." 2 soldiers held. He took a step because confusion had borrowed his feet. Clay's revolver tilted a finger's width. Scarjaw's did too. 50 iron mouths found a single man's shadow. "Stop," Narlin said, not loud. "Enough." The soldier froze. Everyone else did too. She straightened, hand still on Cade, and raised her face to the rims. Smoke dirtied her cheeks. Moonlight caught the wet on her lashes. "You want a word," she said. "Here it is." She touched her palm to Cade's chest where the bandages crossed. She lifted it, blood dark on her skin, and pressed that hand flat to her own breastbone. Once. Firm. "Daughter." The bowl held the syllable like a drum. It wasn't a plea. It was a making. Hayes felt his throat close. Clay's hand shook and then stilled. Scarjaw forgot to breathe for 1 heartbeat. On the north rim, the captain took off his hat. "Not much. Enough." Cobb sneered. "Old tricks. Play acting with blood." He flicked 2 fingers. His 3 men started down again. Clay's voice came out iron. "One more step and no one goes home." Rifles lifted. A horse blew and danced. The bowl turned thin as glass. 1 brittle sound, and it would shatter. Cade's lips moved. Hayes bent close. A shred of sound rasped out. Not a word. The shape of one. Narlin leaned until her ear touched his mouth. Whatever he failed to say, she heard anyway. Her spine straightened. She looked to the captain first, past Clay, past Scarjaw, past every man who thought this moment belonged to him. You wanted his will, she said. Here is mine that matches it. She pointed at Clay. He is guardian until breath is strong. He keeps me. She turned her palm, showing blood to the blue line. You witness. She pointed at Cobb. And you write. The captain's jaw worked. You're 10, he said, not unkind. Maybe 11. I'm the only lungs he has, she answered. That's older than paper. Silence folded in. Even Jed had nothing mean enough to fill it. Cobb tried anyway. Captain, if you bless this, you bless mutiny. The governor will hang it on your door. The captain looked over the bowl, at 40 miles of dust behind them, at the clinic's smoke still on the wind, at a bugler with no mouthpiece, at a girl who had turned breath into law. He tipped his hat back on slow. Sergeant E, he said without looking away from Nalin. Post 3 men to follow at a distance. They will observe. They will not interfere. If any civilian aims at that child, disarm him. If any soldier does, arrest him. A murmur rolled the blue line. Shock, then a shape like respect. The sergeant saluted. Yes, sir. Cobb laughed. Dry. You'll regret that mercy. Probably, the captain said. But not tonight. He turned his horse a quarter, enough to face Cobb without turning his back on the ring. Your men step 1 foot into that wash, and I regret something else instead. Cobb's teeth showed. His 3 in the sand stopped with their boots a hand from shadow. Ink doesn't walk well when iron says no. Clay's breath left him in a sound like gratitude he'd forgotten how to speak. He looked at Nalin. Say it once more, he asked. Rough. For the men who didn't hear the first time. She lifted her bloody palm, touched Cade, touched herself. Daughter. The Circle K answered like a canyon waking, hats up, fists on pommels, voices rolling, not a shout this time but a vow. The sound ran out into the sage and came back changed. Even the horses lowered their heads. Hayes bent to his work, hands quick now that he knew the world would give him minutes. He checked the brass, cleared a fleck, pressed a pad home. Breathe, he told Cade. Borrow if you must. Nalin leaned and gave him another measure of her own. Stay. The captain slid his hat back on. You have till dawn, he said to Clay. Find shade and a quiet place. If he lives, you buy yourselves choices. If he dies, you hand the child to me and I will take her safe. That is the only mercy on offer. Clay nodded once. We'll make dawn. Cobb's voice slithered in from the dark rim. Dawn comes for free. What follows costs everything. Scarjaw smiled without humor. Then bring money. The ring began to move. Slow, smooth, sure. Men backed their horses, making space without opening a gap. The travois slid, sand whispering. The bugler watched his empty horn and smiled as if he could still hear it. At the lip of the bowl, a stone skittered. Jed, half hidden, raised a pistol with his good hand, jaw clenched on hate too old to learn. Scarjaw saw the gleam and drew, but Nalin was faster in a way that wasn't speed at all. She stepped between the muzzle and Cade without thinking. Don't, she said. Not to Jed. To the world. The captain's saber snapped left. A trooper's carbine battered Jed's wrist. The shot went into night and died on rock. Jed dropped the pistol, shock cracking his mouth. Arrest him, the captain said, tired of the day. They dragged Jed back up the slope. He laughed once. It sounded small. Nalin didn't watch him go. She bent back to the brass and the breath and the man who had given her a word. Stay. The ring flowed out of the bowl and into a seam of shadow. The lantern lines on the rims held, frustrated and bright. Paper crackled. Orders tried to remember what they were. In the wash, moonlight silvered sand. The only sound was leather, hooves, and a child's whispering command. Stay. Cade did. For another breath. For another after that. Long enough that Dawn felt, for the first time all day, like something more than a rumor. Dawn bled pale over the ridges, turning the sage a washed-out silver. The Circle K ring moved slow, stretched thin, but unbroken. Horses steamed. Men's eyes were hollow yet steady. Every few steps, someone glanced toward the travois, as if their boss's breath weighed more than any saddle. Cade Rourke lay quiet, chest rising under the brass tube. Each hiss of air meant Nalin still bent close, her lips cracked, her breath borrowed. She hadn't slept. She hadn't asked to. Her small palms stayed pressed against his ribs like a vow she refused to break. Dr. Hayes walked stiff beside her, every inch of him smoke-soaked and bone-tired. Yet when the first bird called out of the mesquite, he managed half a smile. "He's still here," he muttered. "By rights, he shouldn't be. But he is." Clay reined up on a low ridge, scanning the south trail. The sky was clean. No lanterns, no soldiers pressing, no cob, just space. He lifted a hand and the men slowed to a halt. The circle formed itself, horses swinging to face out, rifles laid across knees. For the first time since the clinic burned, quiet stretched without fear's teeth. Scarjaw slid off his saddle, crouched by Nalin. His voice was gruff but softer than it had ever been. "You've carried him farther than any of us thought possible. You've carried us too." She didn't look away from Cade. "I said I would." Cade stirred then, barely, but enough. His eyes cracked open, finding hers through a haze of pain. His lips moved. The sound came dry as dust. "Daughter." The Circle K roared their answer, not in fury this time, but in joy too raw to be hidden. Hats swept the air. Spurs rang like bells. For one moment, the dawn was theirs. Hayes bent close, tears tracking through soot. "You've bought him another sunrise," he whispered to Nalin, "and maybe yourself a lifetime." The priest crossed himself and murmured, "Amen." Clay looked around the circle, voice carrying like the ground itself had chosen him. "You all heard him. This girl walks under the Circle K brand now. You ride with her, you die with her. Anyone who can't carry that, ride north and don't look back." No horse moved. Nalin finally lifted her head. Smoke had left lines on her face, and exhaustion had aged her eyes, but her jaw was set. "He stays alive because I don't stop, so I won't. Not till he can breathe for himself." Scarjaw chuckled, rough and proud. "Then none of us stop either." The men nodded, some wiping their faces with ash-stained hands. The vow was spoken without words. Beyond the ridge, the land rolled south into country with no maps. Danger still waited. Cobb's inky, the fort's questions, the town's poison. But for now, dawn had come, and Cade Rourke still breathed. And at his side stood the daughter he had chosen with one word, and who had carried him through fire with lungs too small for the weight. If this story moved you, if one word could tie strangers tighter than blood, ask yourself, would you have carried him too? Share your thoughts below. Subscribe for more untold frontier tales, and join us next time when another secret from the Old West refuses to stay buried.